The MCU is a franchise that once excited, dazzled, and even inspired a generation of moviegoers. From humble beginnings to an epic climax and satisfying payoff after a 10-year journey of cohesive and interwoven storytelling spanning 22 films of different characters and adventures. The MCU was once the pinnacle of comic book movie adaptations, and now...
You have to stop calling them terrorists.
You've got to do better, Senator.
Well, we all know what happened. So, what am I doing here? I mean, who even am I? Why am I finally making a YouTube video after all of these years when there are already countless other and well more established channels and reviewers who have discussed the current problems of the MCU and basically every other form of media that I would want to review myself? Well, it's because I have a lot to say, and I've wanted to make a YouTube channel of my own for a very, very long time. Okay, well, the real reason is my fiance is tired of me only ranting about this kind of stuff to her, but that's beside the point. So hey, welcome to the first video of my channel, and if you're watching this at any time in the future, hopefully that means I stuck with this project long enough that you're doing like a binge of my old videos. This didn't just become an ADHD fixation for like a week. I love superheroes. I have loved superheroes my entire life. I used to watch reruns of the 90s cartoons on JetX. I had Spider-Man and Fantastic Four folders for school, because, you know, I was the cool one, I was the popular kid. I played the video games, I dressed up for Halloween, you get the idea. And you know, that means I am in the lucky generation who grew up with the MCU from the very beginning. I remember going to the theater with my dad for the very first Iron Man movie. I remember the hype and the excitement for the first Avengers movie, when we couldn't wrap our heads around the idea that Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and Hulk would all be on screen together for the first time. Going to midnight releases during my high school days with my friends. Remember those? Back when those were a thing? Remember when you actually had to stand in line to get a good seat? Yeah, I do too. It was a time-honored tradition for my friend group. We'd stay till the very end of the credits to get a teaser of the next big and exciting plot point. I mean, hell, Captain America Civil War, it came out on my 18th birthday. And instead of going to, I don't know, a strip club or buying my first pack of cigarettes, I don't know, whatever it was the cool kids were doing when they turned 18, my friends and I filled out an entire row at the theater. But, you know, as for many after Endgame, it just hasn't felt that way anymore. Going to see a new MCU film doesn't spark that excitement it once did. And out of my friend group from high school, yeah, well, only one of them is still interested in going to see some of these new movies on occasion. So, you know, why is this? I mean, what happened? How did we get here?
Hey, yeah? You ever wonder why we're here?
Sorry, that's another Fallen franchise for another video. So last weekend, myself, my fiance, and that one friend from high school went to see Captain America Brave New World. Well, the movie was mediocre. I mean, it wasn't the worst project that they've made in the post-Endgame era, multiverse saga, yes, I know what it's called, but it definitely wasn't the best. So that brings me to the point of this video. I am not here to review Captain America Brave New World. I am not here to dissect the story, or the acting, or the bland and forgettable score. No. What I want to do is show an example of, in my opinion, why the MCU has truly fallen off the edge of the cliff. And put simply, that is, the MCU just doesn't have good characters anymore. Well-written, charismatic characters with established motives and personalities was the entire backbone of the Infinity Saga. You had Tony Stark, he was arrogant and snarky, but, you know, he had a heart. You had Captain America, he was just and courageous with unwavering loyalty and integrity. And Thor was, okay, well, I mean, he kinda got a character change halfway through, and I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of it. Sorry, I actually think he was better when his otherworldly Shakespearean personality was a great foil to the mortal characters rather than him just being a himbo. But you get my point. These characters were so likable and so strong that we would sit through weaker movies because we just wanted to see them do stuff. They had such strong personalities that we believed it when they would start to clash and bicker with one another. I mean, it was present from the very first two Avengers movies. And that is what is severely lacking in the modern MCU. Well-written and likable characters. Apart from Loki, Bucky, Peter Parker, and maybe Wanda and Doctor Strange, there really aren't any characters left that we feel a strong love for. And all those that I just mentioned are carryovers from the Infinity Saga. All these new characters have like the same generic personality tropes. And now after watching Captain America Brave New World, I think I finally have an idea on how to really explain this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at two different scenes. We're gonna look at one scene from Captain America Brave New World, and then we're gonna see a scene from Captain America Winter Soldier and compare them. It's a simple comparison, but I really believe that this is a great example of one of the many reasons why the audiences just aren't resonating with these films anymore. So let's start off with a good one. In Captain America Winter Soldier, there is a brief scene at the beginning of the film where Nick Fury and Steve Rogers are taking an elevator down to see Project Insight. During their elevator ride, Cap comments on how elevators used to play music, and Fury remarks that his grandfather used to be an elevator operator.
You know, they used to play music.
Yeah. My grandfather operated one of these things for 40 years. My granddad worked in a nice building, got good tips. He'd walk home every night, a roll of one stuffed in his lunch bag. He'd say hi, people would say hi back. Time went on, neighborhood got rougher. He'd say hi, they'd say keep on stepping.
You ever get mugged?
Every week some punk would say, what's in the bag?
What would he do?
He'd show him. Bunch of crumpled ones and a loaded .22 Magnum.
This is a really good moment between two characters and their appropriate characterizations. We have Steve Rogers, the man out of time, who since being unfrozen in the modern world has already seen more than he could possibly imagine. He's seen how the world has evolved with technology, and he's even fought off an alien invasion. So him making small talk with Nick about elevators having once played music, it's perfectly in character. It makes sense he would say this. It shows how out of place he still is, and that even the littlest things remind him of the time that he once belonged to. You could even argue that him saying this is also his way of subtly commenting on how too much has changed. How even the simplest things like elevator music are things his generation took for granted, and now noticing how bland and silent the world can be without it. And Fury's story about his grandfather, it's a great look into his character. I mean, up until this very scene, Nick had been depicted in the MCU as a stoic and mysterious man with his own agenda, not letting too much of his true self show. He plays his cards close to his chest. He rarely ever drops the persona of a super spy with little more to say than what needs to be done, or the occasional snarky quip. But here, alone with Steve, he shows a more natural human side by telling the story of his grandfather. Nick probably feels more at ease with someone like Captain America. I mean, he's had to deal with Iron Man so much at this point, but he empathizes with Cap's comment. He understands how crazy this all must still be for him. I mean, after all, he was there when Steve first woke up. He knows Steve doesn't recognize the world anymore, and he tries to connect with him a little bit by telling him this story. And all the while, he still has a point to the story at the end by saying,
Granddad loved people, but he didn't trust them very much.
The Russo brothers could have just easily had them go from the office straight down into the sub-basement to see the helicarriers. But instead, they took this opportunity to use the elevator ride to give us a great character moment between Nick and Steve. I remember immediately after leaving the theater, one of my friends kept talking about that moment and how cool it was to see them just talk in a normal way. It was the little details like this, the elevator scene, that made the older movies so great. It wasn't just the over-the-top CGI battles or the cameos. It was scenes like this, to humanize the characters in a way that we could better relate and connect with them. So now let's look at a scene in Captain America Brave New World. In this scene, we find Sam Wilson, Isaiah Bradley, and Joaquin Torres riding in the limo to the White House. They're popping champagne, they're laughing, they're joking around. Sam jokes that he finally got Isaiah to wear a suit rather than his gym clothes, which was a comment he had made to him earlier in a prior scene. Isaiah then comments that he's wearing the suit he got married in while taking a drink of champagne and laughing. And Torres is being Torres. It's just a short moment before they eventually end up at the White House, and there really isn't too much to dissect here, but that's exactly my point. It's a similar moment to the elevator ride in Winter Soldier, in that both take place in some mode of transportation, getting our characters from one location to the next, and they both only exist to show us character moments. Except in Brave New World, this scene isn't driven by strong established character traits that help us relate or connect with them. This moment feels way more like an afterthought on the director's part, put in desperately to try and capture the same feeling of scenes in the older movies, like the elevator ride. You could argue that Torres is acting in character, by joking around like he does in the rest of the film, but his character isn't one that we like that much. I mean, simply being the funny guy, it isn't enough. And a lot of other Multiverse Saga entries feature characters like this, so there's just nothing new to his character to make him stand out in any way. I mean, he's supposed to be the new Falcon, as Sam is the new Captain America, but all we've seen of him is to just be a smart-mouth kid who was written solely to be funny without any true substance to his character. And then you have Isaiah Bradley, who we've seen to only be a brooding and traumatized character. During Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we are told that he was mistreated by the government after his time with the Super Soldier Serum, and it's mostly because he's a black man. He has become very jaded and distrustful of anything or anyone that has to do with the United States government. In the scene right before this, Sam gets a phone call from Ross inviting them all to the White House gala, and you can see how uncomfortable and cautious he is. They have a whole conversation where Sam has to convince Isaiah to go at all. And now he's suddenly partying it up in the back seat of the limo like they're going to an after party. I mean, that was a pretty quick change of heart. You could tell me that this footage was taken of the actual actors going to the movie premiere and then they just recycled it for this scene, and I would believe you. Isaiah should still be very wary of going to the White House, almost reluctant, going like as a favor to Sam. You could still have Torres maybe try to lighten the mood, but Isaiah should remain stern and focused as if anything bad could happen, which it eventually does. And Sam should still be trying to reassure him and promise him that he's there watching his back. You know, like Captain America would? But instead, we're shown them acting out of character in a poor attempt to get us to laugh, like them more. There's just no substance here. When I see scenes like this, I feel like I'm being told by the movie to like these characters. It doesn't feel like a moment that just fits in naturally that will by its nature make me like them. And that's because these characters haven't been established enough to earn a moment like this. I mean, maybe Isaiah really is the kind of person who on the inside likes to party it up with his friends and laugh, but I wouldn't know that when all you've ever shown me of him to be is a stern, traumatized, shell-shocked war victim. But no, let's have him break character so we can remind the people of how these movies used to feel. Let's have him totter into the White House with Torres joking if he should make the text on his phone bigger for him. You know, get it? 'Cause he's an old man. There's just simply nothing special about what they're saying or doing during this limo ride to make us believe that these are actually the characters acting in character. It's just a hollow attempt to make them more likable, and it really just takes us out of the story more than anything else. But you know, maybe I still haven't made my point. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, these two scenes, they're just too different to compare. I mean, one has a more laid back and happy vibe, and the other is just two guys casually talking in an elevator. Their tones are too different to make any fair comparison. Well, all right. Let's look at one more scene for the sake of argument. Arguably, probably one of the best laid-back scenes in the entire MCU. In Age of Ultron, the Avengers throw a party at Avengers Tower. After the bulk of the party dies down, we are left with the core team, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, and War Machine. Oh, and Colby Smulders. She's here too. They're sitting around, drinking beer and just hanging out, and then Hawkeye begins mocking Thor, saying that needing to be worthy to pick up Thor's hammer Mjolnir is just a trick. And then what follows is the entire team trying in their own way to lift Thor's hammer. There are so many details and character-appropriate moments in just this 2-minute scene. And here they all are. Hawkeye tries first to lift the hammer, saying, "You know, I've seen this before," referencing his appearance in Thor 1 when he watched Thor break into the S.H.I.E.L.D. compound and unsuccessfully retrieve Mjolnir. Stark then attempts to lift it while saying,
If I lift it, I then rule Asgard?
Yes, of course.
I will be reinstituting prima nocta.
which is very much in character for him in his smartass and inappropriate way. He then attempts to lift it with his Iron Man gauntlet equipped, even enlisting Rhodey to help him, which could be a subtle reminder that Stark is used to relying on his armor and his companions to get things done. Bruce makes an attempt only to jump off the table and pretend to Hulk out, trying to be funny, which lands about as well as Gwen in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And him doing this calls back to two moments in the first Avengers, when he did the same thing to Natasha trying to scare her, and when he reveals that he is in fact in control of turning into the Hulk. And then Steve steps up to the plate and attempts to lift Mjolnir. He budges the hammer slightly, causing an amazing oh shit look on Thor's face. He concedes like an older brother who doesn't want to embarrass his younger sibling by beating them in Mario Kart, and then Thor just nervously laughs it off. This is of course set up for one of the best payoffs and probably loudest theater reaction moments in Endgame, when Cap does wield Mjolnir to fight Thanos, causing Thor to call back to this moment saying,
I knew it.
The attempts then end when they all look to Black Widow, causing her to smugly say,
Oh, no, that's not a question I need answered.
Okay, now did that seem like a lot of detail for only a 2-minute moment? Yes, but it is within all those details that made scenes like this so enjoyable and memorable. And it's why moments like the limo ride and Brave New World just pale in comparison. This is a culmination of half a dozen characters and their individual character traits that we came to look forward to and love. Even the lesser liked characters. I mean, Hawkeye, for example, he was the butt of every joke back when these movies came out. Everyone made fun of him as just the guy with the bow and arrow. So much so that there's almost a meta reoccurring gag in Age of Ultron about how everyone just kind of looks at Hawkeye as not necessary. Hawkeye actually has a really cool character arc in this film, with him accepting his place in the Avengers and what his true superpower really is. So even though you could call him the weakest link, you still loved him, and they utilized that in his character. And that's exactly where a character like Torres doesn't work. He's built solely on generic archetypes with nothing unique or personal that makes us relate or connect with him. There's no backstory or dialogue to make us care about him whatsoever, yet we're expected to feel something when he gets hurt before the third act of Brave New World. It was moments like this, carefully thought out, and it gave us a sense of realism in an otherwise unreal world. And in a way, they were rewarding the audience that spent so much time consuming these stories to have the context necessary to enjoy a scene like this. This feels earned and faithful to these characters that we've come to learn about. It doesn't feel forced and hollow in a way that feels desperate and inappropriate. So, in the end, if Marvel really wants to recapture the magic that we all used to feel, they just need to spend some time developing their characters in a consistent way. Because it's obviously not just Brave New World. There have been a lot of other characters that have been introduced to us post-Endgame that have either been scrapped or shelved, it seems. And yes, obviously, character development isn't the sole issue with how these movies are received now. There is a lack of good music. Rush TV shows with underpaid and overworked art houses resulting in poor CGI, and just overall a unfocused vision of where they want to go. Where before it felt like everyone was all working together to lead to the same ending. It now feels like everyone was split into groups, given the same ending point, and then they came back with completely different story pitches and they just decided to use all of them. But despite every other problem, at the heart of it all, I really do believe that the lack of quality, charismatic, and likable characters is the overarching reason why the MCU just doesn't feel right anymore. And yes, I know there are some upcoming projects that have been getting a lot of precise focus. Projects like Fantastic Four and Daredevil Born Again, for example. And I know that Brave New World is kind of one of the last before Kevin Feige did announce that they would be slowing down to refocus themselves. It got hit with the reshoot problem, I understand that. So, with all that being said, I am still cautiously and probably naively optimistic for what might happen next. But you know, hey, whether these next ones are good or bad, I'll at least have something to talk about. Thank you for watching. Thank you guys so much for sitting through this and watching my first video. If you could like and subscribe, ring the bell, whatever else you need to do to be notified, I'd greatly appreciate it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think that the MCU's biggest problem is character development, or is it something else? And like I said at the beginning, this is a brand new project for me, so I'm going to be learning as I go. Obviously, things could be a lot better. Also, this editing has been taking me a lot longer than I realized, and I now have a newfound appreciation for the editors that a lot of big YouTube channels have. So just understand that I'm putting a lot of work into this, trying to make this something of my own, and any support you can give would be greatly appreciated. So hopefully, I'll see you in another video.